Okay, our first order of business is to approve our agenda for the evening, and we want to take off discussion item number 2, policy revisions that will come back to us at a later time. And with that, is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
Mr. President, I move that we approve the agenda as amended.
Thank you, Emily. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Kimberly. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion passes, and we'll get started with our agenda. And we start with the superintendent's report. Mark?
Sure, we've got two big reports, well, two big reports. The first one is the audit report, and Paula Johnson is here to introduce that part of the program.
Good evening, Board of Ed. We have with us tonight Kim Lindsay from Raymond. Our audit is complete for the June 30th, 2023 school year. I do want to inform the board that the audit committee did meet last Friday to go over all of the specifics associated with the audit report that Kim is going to get ready to present to you this evening. So Kim is the public sector audit principal at Raymond, and I'm going to turn it over to him, and he's going to go through the highlights of our 6/30/23 audit.
Good evening, board. Nice to see everybody tonight. So the audit is complete, has been sent off to the state. Paula has uploaded her electronic submission of the FID, which is the other piece. So state will continue to flow, which is a really good thing when it comes to cash flow. Here tonight to present the highlights of the audit. You've received electronically the audit report, which is 120 some pages. The federal audit report, another 25 or 30 pages, and a separately issued letter addressed to the board. So I went through all that in somewhat of detail with the board, or the finance committee on Friday. I'll hit some highlights in the slides tonight. So the auditor's opinion, which presents itself on the first page of the actual financial reports, offers an unmodified or clean audit opinion, which is the highest form of assurance we can give you on your financial statements. And of course, that's what you want as a Board of Education. It's what the state requires. They don't like to see qualified opinions or modified opinions. So also, there's several levels of reporting in the report itself. But I'm pleased to say on the financial statement itself and the internal controls related to it and laws and regulations related to the financial reporting of the district, there were no findings or reportable conditions. We did audit ESSER, mainly the remaining ESSER funds. You've spent almost all of those. And actually, we also audited the nutrition program this year. So instead of having $6 million of actual auditing federal funds, we audited about $8.4 million of your $9.6 million, so almost all of it. And sometimes that happens because the feds say that just because you haven't audited a really big program in a while doesn't mean you can't. So every 3 years we have to pick up the largest program. So nutrition is always a large program just because of the size of the district. Also included in the report, you'll see a footnote that talks about your compliance with your capital projects funds, the bonds that you've issued throughout the last several years, and you continue the voters continue to approve bonds for your construction with. So we audit those separately along with your sinking fund property tax levy. The Department of Treasury asks that to be audited separately. They have some very specific things they'd like us to look at regarding bidding, compliance with ballot language, all that kind of good stuff. So you'll see a footnote that says you complied fully with the law related to those items. Just a matter of a couple of things to keep watch of in the report, especially if taxpayers ask you, how do I know what this financial report says if they happen to look at it? You know, it's posted on your website or will be probably after tonight's meeting. There's a section in the auditor's report, pages 13 to 24, which is called the Management's Discussion Analysis. It provides a synopsis and actually some comparative information that you don't see anyplace else in the report. So if a person were to read those 11 pages, they'd get a pretty good gist that everything is going well at the district as far as the finances. I also always talk about, just in a couple of bullet points here, the first two financial reports in the audit are the district as a whole, on a full accrual basis of accounting. On the regular reports that you see, how you adopt your budget, that's fund level reporting, and it's a different basis of accounting. So these reports in the front, the first two, encompass things like long-term debt. In your fund level statements, when you make a payment on long-term debt, it's an expense. But in these statements, it's just like your business. Debt is on the balance sheet, okay? So long-term debt is there. This nasty number that we've been seeing for some time now regarding your share of the state's pension liability shows up on that statement, along with fixed assets and related depreciation. So the numbers I wanted to point out here is that on that first financial statement, when you look at the bottom line, it shows a big negative number. And that's because of these liabilities that we're having to show. Pension liability this year valued at $206 million. Last year was $129 million. How does it swing so much, Kim, in a year? Well, this pension plan is valued on the state's fiscal year end, so the last valuation was 9/30/22. Markets were in the tank, 9/30/22, so there was a huge investment loss in that year. Shows up in your report here. Same thing with the OPEB, which is the retiree healthcare piece of the ORS system, about $11.7 million versus $8.2 the year before. Net result is when you look at that first page, you'll see a negative $64.8 million. Not a deficit you have to worry about, not a deficit you have to eliminate. And quite frankly, it's where every other school system in the state stands as well. Also still talking about those government-wide statements. Overall, if you're thinking about your income statement, there's a change in net position of about $25.6 million to the good. And it really has everything to do with how the pension valuation changes flow through that statement. There are some things that get deferred and amortized over some years. But all in all, an increase of $25.6 million. Total revenues, so district as a whole, on the full accrual method, so no duplication, so transfers between funds and stuff eliminated. Total revenue is $153.4 million this last year. So think about that. Those are big dollars, so this is a big operation. There are still pandemic federal relief funds in there. We did see a pretty substantial foundation allowance increase this last year. And if you remember right, there's been a myriad of state grant funds that are now flowing through state aid categories. Things related to mental health, security, all those things that are important to everybody, and now the legislature has money, and they're appropriating it. It's been running through, we see it again in fiscal year 24. Total expenses about $131 million versus $117 million last year. Once again, biggest changes there related to the pension valuation schemes. Just a couple of slides here showing some numbers in total. On this presentation, you see 3 funds identified on their own. So the general fund, the combined debt service fund, and the 2021 capital projects fund are being shown separately. That's because they're considered major funds, meaning they have magnitude. In that non-major fund column are like 5 or 6 other funds, like student activities, bookstore, the nutrition program is over there, and also some of the older capital project funds are sitting in that non-major fund category. I just wanted to really talk kind of through the 2 funds that are probably of most focus. So I'm going to talk through the general fund and the capital projects fund on this sheet just for a second. So at the end of June, the general fund had assets of about $38 million, mainly money in the bank, money invested, and money owed to us by the state of Michigan and other grantor agencies for grant programs. So if you remember right, you were paid in the summer, so you receive state aid payments in July and August that back to fiscal year 23. When we talk about liabilities in the next section, about $16 million, a big chunk of that is accrued wages and benefits for our teacher group who are also paid over the summer for wages earned through June. So that's a big chunk of the numbers there, along with some deferred revenue. Fund balance ended the year at $22.3 million. That's pushing 20% of a year's worth of expenditures. I will remind you as a board, you did take action to commit 3.837 million of 98T, so the learning loss dollars that are in there for us, but you're going to spend those in fiscal year '24. So it's not all assigned, or it's not all available fund balance, because you did commit this piece. Capital Projects Fund, just wanted to point out there, we're spending down those bond funds, but at the end of June, there were still just under $48 million of cash and investments in the bond fund, liabilities of just over $1 million, and that's mainly just the construction draws that were due at June 30th. So still almost $47 million of bond funds were available at the end of '21 for expenditure on the projects around the district. Looking at revenues and expense along those same lines, general fund revenues just over $124 million this last year. Expenditures of about $118 million, so you actually added about $6.5 million to equity in the general fund. And that's kind of been the theme around the state over the last couple of years. If you remember right, most of that federal COVID money, you're able to supplant normal general fund expenditures with those dollars. So you're now coming to the end of those dollars. All of the state is starting to come to the end of those dollars. Some districts took all that money up front, and others have spent it along and have supplemented their budget, but we're all getting to the point where the funding cliff is kind of there for those dollars. So those one-time dollars are gone. We'll be back somewhat to normal, I would think, by end of fiscal year '24 and for sure in fiscal year '25. Also on this presentation, you can see about $1.9 million of revenues into that capital projects fund, basically investment earnings on those $40+ million that you have invested. You spent $4.2 million on projects around the district, so you used a bit of equity there, about $2.3 million. Any questions on balance sheet or revenue expense stuff? All right. I'd like to throw these couple of visual slides in there for those of us who are visual learners versus text learners. General fund revenue sources, just remind you that 71% of all the dollars that came into the district last year came through the state of Michigan. Some of it's foundation allowance dollars, some of it are those categorical grant dollars. There was a one-time push of retirement funds that came in. Remember, the legislature appropriated several $1 billion, and they sent that out to all the schools and then took it back. So you give it one place, take it out take it in put it in one pocket and take it in the other. But it also inflates your budget. Inflated your budget for '23, both on the revenue and expenditure side. So when you look at comparative information this year, you'll see some numbers smaller. 23% comes locally. Majority of that's property taxes. So now that when we look at state and local together at 94%, the foundation allowance is wrapped up in there. The state assumes you collect your local property taxes as part of your foundation, and then they fill in the backside of that. So those are kind of interconnected. 6% of all the dollars that you received this last year were from federal programs. That's probably last year and this year probably the high points, I would think, on federal programs. Remember, we've come off of 2 years where in the nutrition program we were being paid as if every child was a free lunch eligible student. 23 we went back to normal. 24 we have a blend. So the state's picking up the other side of that, and we're getting a federal and a state reimbursement, which is making the accounting very interesting, and will make the reporting interesting too at the end of next year. On the next pie chart, expenditures, how do we spend those dollars? Now remind the board, the state does, after they compile all the information from the FID reporting this fall, usually in late January, early February, they put out a report, a bulletin that shows you and compares you to other districts your size, regions and such. So that report's often interesting to look at to see how you stack up as far as people often say, you pay too much for administration. Well, how do you actually stack up across the state? Is that really true? Is it not true? But here's how we spend the money in the general fund. This last year, 60% for instruction. And when we say instruction, it's for dollars spent directly in the classroom. So that's the teachers, their benefit packages, their supplies, all that kind of good stuff. It doesn't include building administrators. It doesn't include custodial, transportation. That's all over on the support services side. So 36% support, a couple of percentage points for both community services and athletics. And I will just remind the board that several years ago, when we were kind of in a funding issue, the state was looking at districts who had fund equity and said, well, we'll just take some of your fund equity. You want more money spent in instruction or whatever, you guys can just use your own equity. And they always use the standard of the upper 50s to lower 60s is where districts should kind of fall with those instructional dollars. So at 60%, you're right there in the norm. General fund budgeting results. We talked about this just a little bit at the Finance Committee meeting on Friday as well. Remember your practice as a board, you adopted budget in June of 22, you adopted the first budget for 23. You'll come back to it in the fall or early winter after student counts are in, and you'll amend things, and then you generally will do a shore up budget amendment in June. So this is the June final amendment and the actual results as far as the comparisons. So you had budgeted about $124 million of revenue. It came in at basically that same number. So revenue is pretty much right on, about a $242,000 variance to the good. On the expenditure side of things, we had budgeted just over $121 million. Expenditures were actually about $118 million. So there's about a $3.4 million variance there also to the good. But it has a lot to do with things that were anticipated that didn't occur, such as some construction projects that were going on. The weight room was one of those things. And also just some of the timing on grants. So oftentimes we budget for a grant to be fully spent. Sometimes it doesn't get fully spent before year end. So we had budgeted for a change in fund balance of about $2.9 million. The actual increase to fund balance was about $6.5 million. So a variance of $3.6 million to the good. If you were to look at your total expenditures, you know, that $3.6 million is still a really small percentage variance. Probably larger than all we want to see in the bottom line, but overall, if we're going to have a variance, that's the kind of variance we want.
It's that committed money too.
But that,
It's that 11T committed money too.
yeah, it's part of that. Just the last couple of slides here, just want to kind of bring into focus where we stand debt-wise. So you've been very fortunate. Taxpayers have been very generous for your construction projects, passing bonds. At the end of June, there were still about $202 million of bonds out there and some small amount of installment debt. You repaid $9.8 million of principal, and you issued about $9.8 million on the 2023 billion in site bonds. Capital project or capital assets continue to grow. $234 million of book value, so actual historic cost wouldn't be the insured value. That would be significantly more. But you added about $6.8 million on your various capital projects this last year and took $7.2 million depreciation. So that number will continue to grow. You've got a huge number sitting in capital construction in progress. Those will come on to fixed assets once the projects are put in place. But right now, they're just kind of hanging out there on the balance sheet as construction in progress. Just a reminder, in 23, you received in the neighborhood of $6.2 million of pandemic federal relief and expended that. To remind you again, you have expended basically the majority of all your ESSER funds. There's still a little bit of ESSER 3 left. And of course, the 98 APC still is coming along. And for fiscal year 24, we received a loan of $458 on the foundation allowance. So over the last 2 years, the foundation allowance has grown $58,000. So this is the highest point I've ever seen it. It's the highest point anybody's seen it in the state. It's historic numbers. They've been huge increases. I'd like to say they'll go on forever. State aid fund is in really good shape, though. There was a very large surplus even after this budgeting cycle. The legislature actually put significant dollars away in the rainy aid fund. I do see for 24, unless something else comes along, like another huge strike in the auto industry, We're still gonna be okay in 2024. But I see as we get out a little further, it'll get a little thinner and a little thinner, which will, of course, affect your strategy as far as how you operate the district, so. But overall, great audit. Your team does super work. Sammy was directly involved substantially more this year. I'll handed her some pieces, says I want you to do these. You need to know how to do this stuff. Let's do it together. But they do really good work. Totally ready for us. We came in and were able to do our audit efficiently and effectively, so kudos to them. And the fact there are no findings, kudos to all of those for administrating federal grant funds, doing the work around the district too, so I take questions. Yes?
Well, I'll just start out by saying, as part of the audit committee, it was wonderful to hear your presentation last Friday, Kim, so I appreciate that. And, you know, I hate to say that clean and no findings were expected, but they kind of are, but boy, they're sure appreciated. But what was even kind of above and beyond that was just how Kim articulated the smoothness of the process from Paula and Sammy. They came in, and it just sounds like whatever it is you guys did, you were lined up and ready to be evaluated.
The audit process doesn't start when we walk in the door. We have conversations all year round about issues that pop up. What are you seeing with this? Am I doing this right? This year we had a new standard come into play. Didn't even talk about that, but there was a new standard related to subscription-based software. Last year it was leases. This year was subscription-based software. And if you think about it, in a school district, how many pieces of software, how many licenses do we have for various things? So huge kudos to people in the IT department, programs department, curriculum department. I think they all work together, and we met before you're in to make sure that all the accounting was put together the right way, so that showed up properly in your last budget and stuff. So that I appreciate as an auditor. It just so many problems are averted just by communication structure.
So the other thing we talked about, and maybe you can address here a little bit, is just the fund balance as a percentage and where that sits and your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so the normal question is, what is the right fund balance percentage? What do you recommend? And you'll hear people all over the place on the numbers, but you know, kind of 15% has generally been a number that's been thrown out there. I know you have a minimum fund balance policy on the board. A lot of boards don't actually have a formal policy there. They may have an informal, we might want to make sure we stay above these numbers. The state says once you get to 5%, we consider you a district that's in trouble. We want to start looking at helping you guys out and seeing what's going on. We want to know about your budget process, what's going on with student counts, all that. So your fund balance is significantly more than that right now. You're above it. You're at that 15 to 17% on the unassigned piece. And a lot of it has to do with, you're very fortunate as a district that you have equity, you're not having to borrow. Many districts right now, usually the month of November is like, they're at zero with cash because they got starved for a month on state aid. They don't get a full state aid payment in October. The first full one comes in November. So that borrowing used to be very inexpensive. I mean, to the tune of maybe 0.2 to 0.4% to borrow. So if you had to borrow $3 million, it cost you almost nothing. You want some of that money yourself, right? Now that rate is 4% climate. So the fact that you don't borrow, just think about that. If say that borrow was $3 million, that's $20,000. That's a person. It's a teacher and benefits. You know, so that's a plus there. The other part of it is too is where is the district comfortable? You know, you have fund balance to weather storms. So the year, well, it was 2 years ago, 3 years ago. 3 years ago, the state said, in June, they were still saying, we're gonna cut you by $500. And then all miraculously, the COVID money came through and things happened after year end, so we still had a mess that year. But so the fund balance is there to weather storms. It's also to start initiatives. So just program, there's something you want to do that's a strategic initiative for the district, you have to have the ability to have seed money to get that started and actually take it. So when I look at it, there's another way to look at it as well, is how many days of expenditures do I have sitting in that number? And I've got to tell you, it's less than a month, even at the number you are, because of the size of the district you are, the operating expenses. So it's still less than a month. The fact that the spigot would actually be turned off completely is probably an improbability. That's another kind of factor. So I think it is a comfort level thing. You don't want to have it at 30% or 40%, because then you think about what are we not doing structurally that we should be doing. So you've negotiated employee contracts and all this too, so that's fund balance is necessary for those types of things as well. So I don't know if that's a long roundabout answer. There's probably not one right answer. It's where you're comfortable as a board. And as you go through budget process, that's probably a conversation that comes up every spring. As you're going through your budget, it's like, okay, Paula's giving you the projections. Here's that will take us. Are we okay with that? Paula's the accountant, so Paula's going to be the conservative one. She has to be, just like me. So, yeah.
The reference to 1 month's expenses, that's really an eye-opening thing for me, because I know we're always talking about, this isn't just play money. And we're trying to rationalize, because people look at that and think, oh my gosh, look at all this money, why don't you do this, this, and this? But if it's 1 month's expenses, that's not a lot.
In all of those things, when people say, well, let's do this or that, you have to look at all of those costs, which I know you do, is like, is it an annuity cost? Or is it a one-time expenditure?
Yeah.
Because an annuity cost is a whole different ball of wax
Right.
than a one-time expenditure, right? That's why when the COVID money came, the caution was, make sure you're not building this into your normal operations, because when it shuts off or when it's spent, now you're going to have to absorb it into your general fund. So, and I think, I'm not sure all districts heard that message. We're going to find over the next year and a half to 2 years, there'll be more stress than there's been over the last 3 years, probably with finances.
Well, we always say that we're not going to commit to recurring payments on a finite amount of money.
That's why they call it a budget, right? Other questions out there? Appreciate your time, board.
Thank you.
Kim, thank you very much. Thank you, Paul and Sammy, for all your hard work on the audit.
Our second report is a bond project update from Johnny Edwards, who I should tell you just went through the renewal process with Michigan school business officials to be the chief financial officer endorsement again. So congratulations on your continued work with that, Johnny.
Thank you as well, Mark, and members of the board. Before I get to the update, I just want to share on last Friday, the wood technology course at Portage, Oregon. The board approved a new CNC machine. Sammy and Paula and I were able to go over there to see the machine. They had an open house. So it was great to see the machine in action, and the students led the charge in terms of the information around the course. It was pretty exciting to see how the board's approval was really enhancing their experience at that particular course. So again, just wanted to give you guys an update, and the students were extremely appreciative. At Central L, and I have a few photos today, so but at Central L, the contractors are working on the underground MEP, which is mechanical, electrical, plumbing, along with some masonry bearings. So here's a few photos. This is, I think, roughly a month ago today. This is October 6th. You can see that foundation work going. You move over to October 17th. You can see some of the masonry there. Here, this is not a dated photo, but that's actually the gathering stair. The students will be able to walk up the stairs, and there'll be seating there as well. There'll be a platform to the left of the gathering stair. And then this is as recent as within the last couple of days. You can really see the progress that's occurring over at Central Elementary School. On last Wednesday, Dr. Jensenius and the principal, Sarah Wagner, and I, we were able to take a tour of the site. And it's just kind of amazing to see how all of this work is coming together. And I just left their literacy open house, and some of the teachers were commenting on how pleasant it is to see the progress over time outside of their classrooms. So that's Central L. At Haverhill, the contractors are working on backfilling footings. As the board may recall, Haverhill's project is a couple months behind. They plan to start with their masonry in the next couple of weeks. And hopefully next month we'll have more exciting photos for Haverhill. But this is roughly a month ago. Here's some more photos. And then here's a more recent photo of the Haverhill layout as well. And then my last portion, just moving over to Woodland. Our engagement works continues at Woodland. Over the next 2 weeks, a small team from Portage, Tower Building, we will drive to visit a couple of early learning schools or facilities, one in the Grand Rapids area and another couple of facilities on the east side of the state. We're just looking for ideas of some ways in which we can incorporate early learning with curious kids inside of Woodland as well. On this Thursday, Tower Kingston and Field International will be meeting with our district's leadership team to explore some of the initial layouts of how the new Woodland would fit on its site. The architects will also meet with the Woodland Design Advisory Team after school to do a similar workshop, but more importantly, they're still working to understand the Woodland culture and their community. So that's my bond update related to Central Haverhill and Woodland. And I'll be happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Just want to clarify, you said Haverhill was like 2 months behind. That's intentionally behind.
Yes.
Project or schedule, so didn't want you.
They're not 2 months off schedule.
Right.
Their schedule is roughly 2 months behind Central's schedule, and that was that intentional offset. So everything that we see at Central is, roughly 60 days ahead of what we will see at Haverhill. Thank you for that clarification as well. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Johnny. Before we get into our monitoring presentation, I just want to mention that we were recently invited to attend the What's Right in Education Conference and present to the attendees there. There were probably 150 or so people that attended that conference, and we had a chance. When I say we, it was myself and then two of our principals, Daryl Blasingame and Eric Albertus, went down along, and we talked about our student engagement work. Are you really listening to students, and the building the trust process that is required for that exchange to be meaningful. And our presentation was very well received and appreciated. So I think we've got that. We're really getting some notoriety for that. We also have proposals in for some upcoming conferences. The MASA, that's the Superintendent's Association Midwinter Conference, the National Conference, and also at the Carnegie Summit held later this spring. And then Johnny is presenting at the School Boards Association on Friday night on talking about the process we're using here for construction work. So a lot of opportunities there to talk about some of the things we're doing. And I'm sure there are other things I'm missing, but I know those are some of the more prominent ones.
That's great, thanks.
You're welcome. Dr. Pasco, you're going to do some work with reporting on 1-1.
All right, here we go again. Superintendent Bueller, trustees. So tonight we'll continue our monitoring report of 1-1. Tonight we'll be focused in on the high school piece. We'll take a look at some of those highlights and then get into the next steps to build on that presentation that we brought to you in October. You've seen this table before, so within this, tonight we'll be focused on the MSTEP math ELA for 6th and 7th grade, and then the evidence-based reading, writing, and math for PSAT 8, since this is the middle school data piece that we'll cover tonight. Again, this is a a good summary of when we have comparator districts and what we use for the reports. So let's dig right into it. We'll begin by looking at SAT evidence-based reading and writing. That's page 17 on your report. You should also have a copy of the PowerPoint as well. Just for reference, the evidence-based reading and writing score is out of 720, so a 390 is considered proficient or college ready. Again, we use those two words interchangeably because the state does proficient and college readiness. So let's take a look at the graph. On the left is the percent proficient. Again, these comparative districts are lowest economically disadvantaged from the left, going to the higher to the right, with the state being on the very far right. If you would like, I'll give you the percentages as well, or at least I'll fly through them, and you can jot them down just for reference. So percentage of economically disadvantaged, the lowest was Hudsonville at 18%. Zeeland was 26%. Portage Public Schools, 27%. Huron Valley, 28%. Traverse City, 36%. Midland, 37%. Granville, 37%. And Grand Blanc, 46%. All right, so here the vertical axis represents the percent of students proficient, in which we see that 76% of all students tested within PPS met the benchmark for college readiness in EBRW. So that placed us fourth amongst our comparable communities. Hudsonville at the top at 84%. In spring of 22, we were at 79% of our 8th graders being deemed college ready, and that placed us second for comparison. I will note though, and you could see on the slide here, third and fourth place or third and fourth ranked districts were only 1% to 2% away. So we're right there, but just, that 1% or 2% knocked us down to a fourth ranking where, we could have easily been a little bit higher.
Well, we're right there.
We're close. We're
right.
We're close. Yeah, it's better than, I guess, how it gets presented on. We'll go to page 17 in your report for evidence-based reading and writing. These are for students that are deemed economically disadvantaged. So we had a total of 632 8th graders last year take the assessment. So we had 171, or 27%, like I said previously, would be considered economically disadvantaged out of the group. Vertical axis represents the proficiency. And we saw that 58% of our economically disadvantaged students tested met the college readiness benchmark in evidence-based reading and writing. So you can see up there, that places us fifth amongst our comparable communities. Hudsonville being the top at 76%. Spring of 2022, we had 61% of our 8th graders college ready. That placed us fourth, so dropping just a touch there. I know that we have discussed, particularly last presentation, on how we may want to interpret and present this moving forward, but just for consistency's sake, for race and ethnicity, I'll keep the presentation the same as before. Again, open to looking at different ways to present this data. So here we have basically three groups: white, black, African American, as well as other than white. And again, in the other than white, we include black and African American students within that category. Same mention around having low numbers of groups of students. It's hard to make the comparables. So for example, here we had Midland had 18, and Granville had 17 black African American students in their 8th grade cohort last spring. So that meant for those schools that represented each student about 6% swing either way. When you look at PPS, we had 41 black African American students, and that would represent 2.4% for each student amongst all three middle schools. So not so much apples to apples in terms of comparison for numbers, as well as not so much apples to apples comparison across the comparatives, because we just don't have the groups of students. And you guys have heard me say that in the past. But I will note this has been one of our largest for a testing cycle, even at the 11th grade group. In terms of our African American testing group, 41 students, that's been the largest number that we've seen in these reports. So just something to note, and something I'm going to pay attention to as we move forward to see, especially when we look at the percentage of proficiency and whether or not that group is growing within the district and how we can better support moving forward. So when we look at it overall, the state showed that 32% Black and African American students were college ready in evidence-based reading and writing, and then in PPS it was 49%. So that placed us third within the ones that we could actually compare to. Again, very open to looking at a different way to interpret the race ethnicity for these monitoring reports moving forward. All right, we'll move on to math. This is on page 18 of your report. We look at all students relative to our comparable districts. Math scores are also out of 730, but a 430 out of 430 is considered proficient or college ready. And we see PPS at 55%, we're being proficient. So that tied us third among our comparable communities, 63% being the highest at Hudsonville, 31% being lowest within the comparators. And then looking back a year in spring of 22, we were second at 56%, just as a reference. So a 1% drop from the previous year. So really, technically or essentially maintaining, but that's where we're falling within our comparative groups. Looking at economically disadvantaged, we show that 29% of our 171 students were college ready or proficient. That put us sixth amongst our comparable communities. Hudsonville the highest at 44% and the lowest at 24%. In spring of 2022, we were also ranked sixth at 32% for reference. So this continues to be an area of growth as we drop a few percentages here. And as we saw with the high school data, math performance continues to be the challenge, and we've had a good discussion last time around kind of what we're looking at doing to help remedy that. And then finally, at least for the SAT, the state data showed that 12% of our Black African American students were college ready. PPS was at 20% of our 41 students. So essentially, 8 out of 41 were college ready, and that's obviously a number that doesn't sit well with us. So no doubt this is where we can do a lot of work and have a lot of improvement. We rank 2 out of 3 comparators. Again, tough to rank and tough to compare apples to apples with these, but we know that this is definitely an area where we continue to look at ways to improve. So we'll get into some of the MSTEP data, and that's moving into student growth percentiles. The State Office of Educational Assessment and Accountability as a method to calculate the SGPs. You guys have seen this last year, I put up here. And we're able to pull the data from Michigan School Data website. And neither of us, or any of us on the team, I think, are the folks to explain this to you. But just know that there is a way to calculate this that you see in the slide. I will kind of restate what I said last year around how student growth percentiles are calculated. I think this kind of helps the group. SGPs are determined by calculating growth between current and previous assessment scores, and then comparing that to the growth of a statewide academic peer group. So essentially, comparing growth in relation to a similar starting point. So as an example, all students who scored a 1300 on a previous MSTEP assessment are then ranked on a scale score between 1 to 99 when that same group of peers takes the next assessment, so say the next MSTEP assessment. And this year was the first year that they were going back 1 year. And the reason why they did that is because now the state feels like we have clean data coming out of the pandemic where there was full accountability and really showing that post-pandemic growth. So we're no longer dipping into those years where there was inconsistency with accountability and the number of, any type of accountability around participation rates and whatnot. So if you did better than all other students in your peer group, you would have an SGP of 99. So when they rank from 1 to 99. If you're in the middle, obviously it'd be around 50. And then the lowest you would have of an SGP, student growth percentile, so would be 1. So they start with a similar group of achievement peers. The next time you take the assessment, then students get ranked. Okay. And we want students with an SGP of 40 or above, because that's what the state has defined as adequate growth, and that's stemming back to the 2016 state report cards. I don't know if you guys remember the scorecards when they were given, and that's still kind of where the standard is in terms of growth. So let's move into the data. Oh, class change.
Good evening, Mustang staff members. It is now 7:15 p.m., so please make your closing comments and get your butts out of here. It is 7:15 p.m. Conferences are over for Monday. Please leave. Have a good night.
That might be a first thing. All right, let's take a look at this table on page 19, representing the percentage of students with student growth percentiles or SGPs of 40 or above. So again, defining what that average or above average growth would be. So the year column in the chart represents the percent of students that achieved an SGP of 40 or greater. And you'll see it for each respective year listed for both ELA or evidence-based reading and writing, as well as math. And so here's where we kind of see some positive highlights. In ELA, we showed significant increases. So the state deems a significant increase by 15% or more or higher. So, and that was in both 6th and 7th grades. 8th grade, we did show an increase in all students, but we did see an increase in economically disadvantaged as well as our Black and African American students. But we're still maintaining a high percent of students with average or above average growth. So that's a positive. In math, we showed significant increases, again, 15% or higher in both 6th and 7th grade, and we showed increases in 8th grade. So when we're looking at growth and taking kids from one spot to the next, we actually do a relatively decent job in that. I think that's something to celebrate. The next step slides, you saw this in October. Not a whole lot changes for the middle school. We continue to evaluate the data, both at the middle school and the high school, continuous improvement teams. We've been going around with our team from the curriculum department. Today we had, where were we, 12th Street for a continuous improvement workshop. So we're meeting with all 14 buildings, helping them get organized and getting more in tune as to what their needs are to help support their goals from curriculum, instruction, and assessment lens. We're going to continue to analyze the math and evidence-based reading and writing results with our departmental teams. We're focused on Tier 1 as our big strategy and goal within the district, as well as our coaching system to support new teachers, and coming up with the professional learning plan for the year to help support math instruction in particular. At the Tier 1 level, we tested all of our 8th graders in October on the PSAT 8, the digital suite of assessments, so we should see those results relatively soon, and we'll get that data into our teachers' hands as well, so we can make some adjustments to make as much impact as we can with the 8th grade group, as well as our juniors, because we'll get the PSAT and SWAT data back as well for this particular year for both of those cohorts. And then again, as we mentioned last time, there's a greater conversation that we'll continue to have around bringing the math curriculum review cycle up prior to the year of 2026 in which it's slotted right now. I'm going to move on to the return to in-person instruction and continuity of service plan, and then I'll come back for MR11 and hopefully answer any questions or take some questions. We also have our team here with our Christina and Dr. today to help answer anything based off of the monitoring report. But there's certain assurances, as the board knows, that have been updated to align with the interim final requirement for ESSER 3 funds that we needed to comply with. So this is what we're doing tonight as one of those presentations to inform you of our goals for the year for 23-24. This goes up until September 30th of 2024. So there may be one more presentation in the spring to update you on these goals. They haven't changed. I think the only thing we've changed here is the year 23-24. We're still shooting for that 80% benchmark in terms of our K-5 students meeting or exceeding that in reading, and that's based off of our Acadians. And for mathematics, FastBridge by the end of the school year. And then for our 6th through 8th grade students to meet or exceed the grade level benchmarks in reading, deemed by FastBridge, as well as mathematics FastBridge by the end of the school year. So that hasn't changed. And us setting goals around our progress monitoring or benchmark assessment system, that was in play before COVID ever came around. And whether or not we have this requirement to actually present to you around this just continues. This is part of the work. When we do our benchmark assessment cycles, we don't utilize that data to make huge instructional shifts and changes, but it does give us an idea of where each individual student is at those given times, and that's usually fall, winter, and spring. and we continue to set these goals. Right now, it's at 80%. Looking back last year, there were areas where we actually met that goal, and there were some areas where we were a little short. So we do pay attention from year to year as to whether or not we're hitting those marks at the respective grade levels in which we set our goals for. Okay? So that was a requirement to update you all there. That's also, I believe you have a document, maybe you might have printed it for them, Barb. If not, it is on our website for the continuity of services plan. You can check out the full document there as well. So going back to MR11, middle school data, pretty similar to maybe what we have presented in October with high school. Kind of, you know, a lot of the achievement data seem to be around the same area in terms of our needs and the struggle with math and some of the challenges that we're seeing there. So I'll hand it back over to the board for any questions or comments that you may have.
It was really encouraging to see the growth. So separate from the bar chart, which when you first look at it is alarming, to see the growth from one year to the next was very encouraging.
I mean, Michael, does that mean learning recovery is happening? I mean, that's
Yes.
was the conclusion I drew when I looked at that slide.
I would say so. I think, you know, particularly evidence-based reading and writing and ELA, I feel like we've been able to kind of catch the dip. And it's the same conversation we had in October around math, is we need to be able to, you know, just stop kind of the trend that's happening right now, and it's a downward trend. And like you said, we've seen some comparators that have figured it out. They've been able to address whatever the issues are, put things in place, make the adjustments, and now they're on more of a positive trajectory back to maybe those old percentages of achievement that they saw pre-COVID. I mean, that's where we want to be, and that's where our goal is. So I think evidence-based reading and writing, ELA, we're seeing some good stuff. I think really the challenge and the focus, not that we're not going to be focusing on ELA or evidence-based reading and writing, because there's lots of great stuff that's going on to help support that and improve it. But math, we really want to be able to kind of stop that downward trajectory and start seeing that improvement. So, you know, hopefully we'll see that, you know, in upcoming presentations. We've got a lot in play. You know, I mean, last time we went a little bit more in depth in terms of those next steps, but it's a similar approach, really K-12, but particularly 6-12 when we're looking at these data sets here.
The 6-12 or the 6 to 8 part will be interesting to see with the implementation of the new curriculum, what effect that has on it, because it is so literature-based that it may really give them a big jump.
Yeah, I would add, in the comparator data in here, I mean, some of those numbers are not where we'd want them to be because we have high expectations, but none of it's bad, right? I mean, nothing in here is a freak out kind of bad thing. But some of them you know, the expectations are higher and you fully, you know, acknowledge that. You know, we appreciate it. And then the growth numbers, it's good news.
Yeah, there's a lot of great stuff happening. There's a lot of hard work that's happening. Our teachers are doing, you know, all they can, and our support staff, our leaders, you know, those that are working in central office to help support the buildings. But people are trying. You know, people are working hard, and I think there's going to be a time when we're up here and we're going to start, you know, seeing things trend in a different way. As to when that is, not too sure, but we're going to continue to be persistent and stay focused with our continuous improvement efforts until we start seeing, you know, students achieving where we typically would like to see them achieve, especially pre-COVID numbers. So.
My last comment here will be something, well, hold over from our last meeting where I made the comment about the comparison with Black African American students and just trying to think through, and I'm kind of testing this with my colleagues here, but Mark, testing it with you and Michael, but trying to find a fresher way to do that. So we're dealing with districts that kind of look more like us on that slice of the student population. And I know it can't be done with a snap of fingers, but trying to get there.
And I know that's something that you as a board work with Mark on in terms of how things are interpreted, but, you know, we could also do some work to give some maybe different examples and different approaches, and maybe share that with Superintendent Beelang as he has those conversations with all of you to see if there's a different way to present that data, analyze that data. I think there is some room for improvement in terms of how we present and relay that information to all of you.
And along with that, I would say economically disadvantaged, because there seems to be an awfully close correlation between the two. So I think that needs to be part of the equation and flushing it out, regardless of race.
Right.
And this is something, I mean, we get the 3 reports in the fall, September, October, November. So, I mean, we got some time to work on this before the next cycle, gets us next in 2024.
Well, thanks for listening. Appreciate all of your support.
Thanks, Dr. B.
Thank you, sir. Okay, we'll move to our comments and communications section. Are there any comments by board trustees this evening?
I have a couple. I attended the CIC meeting a couple of weeks ago. Just want to let my fellow board members know that it's now going to be required that personal finance be included as a part of our required instruction at the middle and high school level, I think correct me if I'm wrong on this. So CIC is currently looking at how best to make that happen, whether it's a special class, whether it's integrated into econ or FACS or one of those areas. But just wanted to make you aware, if you have anybody ask questions about it or you have thoughts about it or whatever, that's in process. So that's one. And then I went to Little Women on Friday night and I saw Mark there. And oh my goodness, it was absolutely fabulous. So if you missed it, I'm sorry. But Portage Northern has Little Mermaid starting Friday, so you can go check that out instead if you missed it.
Thanks, Terry. Anybody else?
Question for you, Terry, in addition to a comment. This summer, I attended the open house for the middle schoolers who, many of them did presentations on finance. Is this going to be similar? Or do you have any ideas if that was or not?
I don't know where it's going to land. They're getting input from a lot of people that are involved to say where best this would fit. Does it fit better at the middle school level, or do we delay it until high school, because that's when you're really talking about kids that have jobs, kids who are going out into the workforce, those kinds of things. So it's just really at the early exploration point.
So that was the question, and thank you. The comment was that those presentations I heard this summer were incredible. They were very well done by those students, so I'm excited.
Cool.
Anyone else?
I would give a quick thank you to my colleagues for the extra time today in the retreat. So we debated some words, but it always leads to deeper discussion and trying to get better in touch with kind of how we do things and handle things as a board. So appreciate the time invested today.
Thanks, Bo. Anyone else? I just have a couple of things. I want you to all not worry. I'm going to go to the MASB Delegate Assembly on Thursday night, so don't worry. We're going to be all right. Also, Bo and I got a chance to attend Mr. Wykrant's wood technology show the other day as well. I just want to echo Johnny's comments. It's a very impressive shop. Got to see the new CNC machine in action, and you learn so much more there than just how to work with tools. The students that provided us with information and toured around the shop were just very knowledgeable, very professional. I attended the funeral service for Superintendent Rickers, and there were an awful lot of Portage retired employees there, and a number of them still track what's going on with the district, so a lot of them had questions about different things, and it was good to see them and talk with them. And finally, I want to give a shout out to the boys and girls cross-country team at West Middle School. They had an incredible year. They came in first place in every event they entered. So kudos to Coach Moon and his staff and all the parents for their support of this, just an excellent program at West Middle School. That's
No
all
surprise.
Yeah,
No
right.
surprise.
Right. That's all I have. Anything else from trustees? Okay.
Okay, can I add one more thing about the northern wood shop?
Well, you were
It's-
done, but okay.
It was, you cracked the door open, Randy, so I'm going there.
Okay.
But, the thing that impressed me so much are the number of students that come out of that course career-ready. I mean, a number of those students are ready to go into the workforce with really good skills, and not just, you know, working with the material, but leadership skills are developed there, and it was great to see.
Sure. Thank you. We're going to move to the consent agenda on page 26. We only have one item tonight, and that's the minutes from the October 6, 2023 regular business meeting. Are there any exceptions to the consent agenda as provided? Hearing none, the consent agenda is approved as presented. And we now go all the way over to page 32, Assurance of District Performance, Monitoring Report 2.2, Treatment of Staff. Is there a motion, please?
Mr. President, I'd like to make the motion that the Board of Education accept monitoring report 2.2, treatment of staff, as a reasonable and evidence of compliance with policy.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Mark?
Sure. Again, an annual report that is presented to the board on one of our executive limitations. Just a couple things. My interpretations have remained the same. Only the reports have been updated where appropriate. One of those I wanted to bring to your attention is the fact that we have started a staff academy for teachers who are new to Portage Public Schools, and they meet periodically throughout the course of the year. In addition to the onboarding activities we have at the beginning, there's just so much information that new staff members need to have, and it gets a little overwhelming if you try to do that all at one time at the beginning of the year. So we've not only, we've spread that out, reinforced it, gives us a chance to really talk about some of the district level initiatives and the work, that we're doing. And as they get acclimated, it's them, having a chance to ask questions and get clarification on that. So thanks to the CIA office for bringing that about. And it was really something that the new teachers this year asked for. They really wanted to have this, to stay in touch with themselves and learn from each other as they went through their first year in the organization. So want to mention that. Also that, we have some built-in practices to get feedback from our professional staff, from all of our staff really, and that's all of our new employees go through a 30 and 90-day rounding activity with their supervisor. So that's happening across the district to see how they're doing, make sure they get the support that they need, and make sure that we're living up to the values and the expectations that we set for ourselves and that we told them we would do. So that gives us good feedback through that. And then also through regular rounding. Our goal is to round on all employees who are supervised and by their supervisor or their team, and to get feedback also on things that are working well, things that we need to improve on, similar to what we do at the board level as well. And one of the ways we also get more, we get good feedback through that, and it kind of helps put things into perspective. But we also continue with our employee experience surveys, and I've just highlighted there a few of the things that at a very high level that we look for. We look at the top 2%. That's how many people are saying, again, this is collective across the organization, either agree or strongly agree that we're doing well. And as you recall, with the other instruments that we're using, those were new benchmarks were set because some of the questions were changed by the Studer group in regards to this. So you can see there are our values for that, 69%, which again is a recalibration of our people either agree or strongly agree that we're doing well here, that their experience is a positive one. And then the Net Promoter one is one we also like to track. and they're asked the question, if given a choice, I would recommend that a parent select this district for his or her child. Obviously, we'd like to see that higher than it is, but that's where it is, and we're, trying to do, through the rounding and some of the follow-up questions, we try to get at what is it that people need in order for that response to be, a resounding yes. So, so there's that, and I guess the rest. There is. I just at the one of the policy restraints is that we not have employees who directly supervise a staff member, and we do have several situations. One situation at Central High, one at Northern, one at West, and one in transportation where we make other arrangements for supervision if it's a family member of someone that would normally do their supervision. So we've made arrangements for that. And then I left at your table as part of this little folder. It really gives you a detailed explanation of the 5D evaluation system, the rubric that our principals and others are using when we evaluate our instructional staff. And it's quite an involved process that everyone has to go through to do it, to complete an evaluation. So if you have interest in looking at that, you'll see just how stringent of a document that is. And that's all I have for that report. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mark? Okay then, all those in favor of approving monitoring report 2.2, treatment of staff, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. And, we'll move on to page 43. Again, assurance of district performance, monitoring report 2.3, compensation and benefits. Is there a motion, please?
President Van Antwerp, I move that the Board of Education accept monitoring report 2.3, compensation and benefits, as a reasonable interpretation and evidence of compliance with policy.
Thank you, Terry. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Mark?
Okay, this is again, no changes to interpretation. The first part of this really speaks to me, myself, not being able to change my own contract, and the only changes that occur to that are made by the board, and the last one was done in December of 2022. For the rest of the staff, we do have either collective bargaining agreements or guidelines that have been developed for administrative staff, along with our operational policies that are in place that address many of the things that the board might have concerns about here, about implied employment or continuity of employment. So we do have language that addresses all of that. And then one of the things that we're kind of phasing out of, the board approved a resolution kind of phasing out the pay for performance or performance pay plan that existed here in the district, as staff members, the administrators who were under that, they were mostly administrators, some are now back in the classroom, but that's down to 5 individuals that remain in that group that are entitled to those additional benefits. So once those folks leave the organization, that plan goes by the wayside, and in the meantime, they're not, the benefits from that plan continue to remain. That's all I really have to say on that policy. Any questions? I'd be happy to answer.
All those in favor of approving monitoring report 2.3, compensation and benefits, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes, and we'll move to page 51, assurance of district performance again, monitoring report 2.5, financial condition and activities. Is there a motion, please?
President Van Antwerp, I move that the Board of Education accept the 2022-23 financial report, Single Audit Act Compliance Report, and Management Letter as presented.
Thank you, Terry. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, sir. Any discussion on this one? I would not think so. Okay, all those in favor of approving Monitoring Report 2.5, Financial Condition and Activities, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion passes. And we'll now move to an action item to approve the Special Education Parent Advisory Committee member. Janine.
It is my pleasure to nominate once again Sarah Baird to represent the district in our Parent Advisory Committee. The Parent Advisory Committee meets at KRESA. It is made up of representatives from each public entity in the county, and it is required by the IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Educational Act, to engage parents in all, not necessarily the policies, but we make sure that the parents that are on the committee are well-versed and know exactly what's happening in the district. And it also brings us closer to parents and goodwill, which we are very much focused on at this point.
Thank you, Janine.
That's it.
Yeah, thank you.
So this is a reappointment, right?
It's a reappointment. I don't know how many years, we couldn't remember, but a lot.
Well, we thank Sarah for her service. That's great.
Yes, she does a great job.
Very good. Is there a motion, please?
Yes, President Van Antwerp, I'll make the motion, offer that the Board of Education approves Sarah Baird as a member of the Kalamazoo RESA Special Education Parent Advisory Board as presented.
Thank you, Keith. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor of approving Sarah Baird to the Parent Advisory Board, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The motion passes, and we'll go to our next action item, which is the Haverhill Central Elementary pilot furniture purchase. Benny?
Thank you again. This is kind of like our third and maybe final round of pilot furniture recommendations related to Central and Haverhill. What we're trying to test with our teachers and students is what array of furniture will work best for the upcoming schools prior to making the final decision. So we have two vendors we've been working with, Custer and Great Lakes Furniture Supply. And what we're trying to accomplish in this recommendation is to work around 8 total classrooms, 4 at Central L and 4 at Haverhill Elementary School. And then over the course of the remainder of this school year, along with Howard Pinkster, we'll be interviewing teachers and students to get more information and feedback about some of their experiences related to the furniture. And again, this is to be proactive prior to a final decision is being made. And then the great thing about all of this work is when Central L is demoed, the existing pilot furniture that they've been using will be able to carry forward into the existing Haverhill so that other schools will continue to be able to use some of the furniture prior to their buildings coming online. So that's a quick synopsis of the pilot furniture recommendation for tonight. I'll be happy to answer any questions for the board.
Thank you, Benny. Is there a motion, please, to approve the pilot furniture purchase?
President Van Antwerp, I move that the Board of Education approve the purchase of pilot furniture for Central Elementary and Haverhill Elementary in the amount of $56,865.20 from Custer and $2,039 from Great Lakes Furniture Supply, Inc., for a total purchase of $58,904.20, the funds for which will come from the 2019 Bond Fund, Proposal 1, unallocated contingency.
Thank you, Terry. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor of approving the Haverhill Central pilot furniture purchase, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. Thank you. And we're moving to our last agenda item, which is a discussion item for tax resolution. Paula?
Good evening, Board of Ed and Superintendent Dealing. included in your board packet, this is a standard customary item that we bring to the board, recommendation to approve the attached resolution, which will occur at our next board meeting later. I'm not sure, I'm sorry. But this is so that we can levy property taxes and receive those revenues from the city of Portage in the summer months. And the summer months represent that, really close to that timeframe that we don't receive state aid. So from a cash flow standpoint, this is a very smart thing to do for the district, and so we just have to notify the city of Portage by the end of December that we plan to have them levy for us next summer. So it's a customary item. Any questions? Over here.
Thank you, Paul.
I would just underscore, because we have some trustees who weren't at this meeting last year, this is a benefit that few school districts get, as most localities do this in the winter, so there isn't an option to do it in the summer. So it's a big benefit for our district, and it allows us to have positive cash flow this time of year, so we don't have to borrow. So it's bravo, City of Portage.
The majority of our property tax revenue does come from the city of Portage, so our other municipalities that we receive tax revenue for, that comes through in December, it's a very small amount compared to what we do receive in operating dollars through the city of Portage.
Thank you both. Thank you, Paul. I just want to thank everybody on the board for your work tonight at the retreat and during the meeting. It's been a long day, and looking forward to get your monitoring report evaluations and your meeting evaluations. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, paperwork.
Yes. I shredded it in my